which is arguably one of the most important parts along with your pitch. Of course, your pitch is what gets you into the conversation, but your resume is what they'll refer to. And I strongly advise having it available, like just to give out at any given time. So we're actually just gonna look at this resume really quickly. I'm not sure if the link's gonna work. Let's see. Okay, yeah, hopefully you can see that. Okay. So this was actually recommended by a Microsoft engineer, and these are the type of resumes they look for. So this is a technical resume. I'm not going to go into all the details just because you can kind of see what it has, and we're going to go into more details on the next 2 slides. But just know that your contact information should always be at the top, and you should have your employment, your education, and your technical experience or skills. And it should be 1 page because they do a quick 15 to 30-second glimpse over or spot check. And yeah, we'll go into more specifics soon. So let me go back to the slides. And there. So as for organizing your resume, you're going to have your education, obviously. That's important because they want to make sure that you have a degree or you're pursuing one. It's going to have your major, your GPA. It's recommended that you put it on if it's at least over a 3.0, as well as relevant coursework. So this varies. Sometimes you might not want to put your relevant coursework because you can prove it through your work experience. But if you don't have work experience yet, or you just want to fill up some blank space on your resume, it's always nice to have that coursework. Also, of course, work experience. That's super important. You want to show that you have tangible experience or even projects like side projects, as well as your leadership experience because it shows that you're more involved even outside of school, and your extracurriculars, again, to go along with that extra involvement. So, SWE member is obviously something you want to have on there. And last but not least, of course, your technical skills. This might be at the bottom of your resume depending, but maybe the languages that you've used, the frameworks, or maybe things like AutoCAD if you're a mechanical engineer, stuff like that.
Yeah, so we have some, some yeses and nos for your resume. Definitely big parts of yeses is definitely keep it 1 page, short and sweet. Use bullet points so it's clear and concise, and then the recruiter can just read it off the list and be like, bam, 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 there you go. And most of your resumes will probably be turned in on their online application sites and everything. So if you have your GitHub link, your LinkedIn links, it would be kind of cool to take that extra step and hyperlink them. So if they do click it on your resume, it takes straight to your networking sites. And then other stuff like side projects, hackathon awards, that's totally including what you were involved in, outside of classes. Recruiters love to see that. And other things like colors, keep it professional, keep it light, but action words are very important. You don't want to be like, I worked on this and that. You'd be like, I led this, I built this, I got the team going and everything. Those are the big words you want to use. And then couple no's is that your resume, you want it to be, again, clear and concise and succinct. So you don't want to have too many bullet points. You don't want to overwhelm them with information. And then one thing that's sort of my pet peeve for resumes is having tons of empty space. Fill out that resume sheet as much as you can, and that could be widening the text or anything, or spacing it out a lot more, because you definitely don't want the recruiter to give you any reason to not look at your resume, and space is definitely the first thing that they see. All right, so now you have your resume. Now it's time to, talk the walk, right? So for the elevator pitch, I'll give you, can you move to the next slide? Sorry. So exactly what is an elevator pitch? So imagine you're in an elevator ride with another person, then that person turns around and says to you, hey, I'm a company recruiter and offering people jobs. Tell me about yourself. And you're like, what? This is so unexpected. What am I supposed to do? Well, you pull out your handy dandy elevator pitch, which is a pitch that is spoken in the amount of time as an elevator ride. That's a little cute background story for it. But either way, it's just a short little tell me about yourself pitch that you just immediately say to the recruiter, and they kind of know a little bit of stuff about you personally and skills-wise.
So let's talk about prepping that pitch, which is very important. So going into this, I want to preface this by saying that there are always going to be quick facts about yourself. You're always going to start off with your name, maybe your major and your year, order doesn't really matter here, as well as skills that you know. So you should have those memorized because they're not going to change, and that's going to be the first things that they should know about you. Next, of course, if you're at the intern fair or career fair, you want to have done research on the companies you're talking to. Very often, you're not really going to come across random people on the street and give an elevator pitch. It's more just like you have like a place in mind, you have a person in mind, maybe you're reaching out on LinkedIn or like, in person at a career fair or something. So have that, like look at those positions, look at their values, their technologies and new projects. And though you don't have to have every single thing memorized, being able to incorporate at least one fact about the company shows that not only are you detail oriented, but you can also like put yourself into that, Also, stories and strengths. So know your experiences and have them just know them really well and be able to market them. So talk about your relevant experiences, what you're interested in, and how that ties back to the company. That's the most important thing, because so often we talk at recruiters instead of talking with them and having this conversation. And that's what really makes a lasting connection that can land you a job. So with all those things said, let's put it all together.
All right, so we're gonna ask a little bit of audience interaction from you guys. Like we said, we kind of want to keep this casual, almost like a conversation, which is actually kind of true when you do a pitch to a recruiter. So what we're gonna do is that, so Jenrose and I, we are going to actually give you example elevator pitches, and they will be actually our elevator pitch. And so I'm gonna go first, and after I give my pitch, I just want to hear from you guys. What did I do great on it? Like, what did I actually say in my elevator pitch? What maybe I could have done better? We just kind of want to hear from you guys. Okay? So, Jenrose, I am ready for this.
All right, Miss Afrida, tell me about yourself.
Hi, well, I'm Afrida Tasneem, and I'm currently a junior studying for computer science at the University of Texas at Dallas, and I am looking for a summer 2021, software engineering internship. My programming skills include Java, C++, HTML, Python, and JavaScript. One of the side projects I would like to talk about is this app called Chronica. Chronica is a self-care app where a point system was set up to recommend physical activities, going outside, calling a friend, really to check up on the user's mental health. The tech stack that I worked with within a team included React Native and connected it to the React website, where if you logged in on the app, you can log in on the website and see the statistics. Other than my academic projects, I also have some leadership experience. I am part of ACM as a projects officer, leading and managing a whole team of students working on a project. I'm also part of Society of Women Engineers, where I am a WeHack assistant director, and that is that I help the co-directors of WeHack to actually organize a whole hackathon. Other than that, I love to read, I love to sing, and I really enjoy traveling around the world, but we are in a pandemic, so stay safe. And I read a lot about your company, and I love how you guys work on these certain projects, especially like mobile and website apps, which is something I'm actually looking into as in the career field. So I'm really looking forward to getting to know you and the company, and really hope to get a chance to experience this.
Nice. All right, y'all. So we do want some interaction, so feel free to, go onto your mic and talk about, what she said, what she did, some things that you noticed that we talked about, maybe things that, you think she could improve on or things you do differently. Feel free to put it in the chat. Just to break the ice a little bit, I'll go first. So Alfreda and I, of course, practice this a little bit, right? And every time we do it, it's slightly changed because you're not a robot. You're not going to have like a fully memorized speech, at least not all the time. Like you could, maybe, but for the most part, it's going to be very natural. Also, somebody did ask how long should they be? So an elevator speech is like the length of an elevator elevator pitch. So that's like 30 to 60 seconds. Of course, I'm not going to time it. Nobody's going to time you unless this is like an ECS 1100 class. Then they do time you. But for the most part, it's a natural conversation. And so, of course, she put in her interest, which I really liked. And that's something that we didn't mention. Feel free to have personality. It's going to shine through, especially like in an in-person or face-to-face interaction. But you can add in like little fun facts about who you are. And who knows, like some people get hired because they have like a blue scarf that the recruiter liked, or like because they mentioned Taekwondo and that showed off that like their dedication for like years of mastering a sport. Because all these skills are transferable. You just have to know how to market them. So someone mentioned that the transitions were really good, and I totally agree. I feel like you organized it in a very nice manner. Like you did your introduction, you did your skills, and then you did like your leadership experience, and you summed it up. But yeah, someone else is saying, if you know the job, it's best to talk about your interest in the specific role and state how you would best fit. I think they're absolutely correct, and no ums or uhs. Of course, you can't be perfect all the time, but it'd be like that sometimes. But yeah, I think that person is absolutely right. So like, for example, like, this one was more of a general elevator pitch, but if you do know a company, which is what I'll go into, then you can of course like plug their latest in like technologies or maybe what they use or your experience with them, etc. So does anybody else have any insight or feedback? Y'all know this stuff. This is great.
Yeah,
The things that you have to
teaching us.
Yeah, this is great advice. Yeah, show a little bit of your personality through the pitch. Yushi is absolutely correct. Yeah, it's never a bad idea to show off like who you are as a person, because they're not hiring just you and your skills. Of course, that's a big bulk of it, but they're also hiring you. So work culture and work fit is a big factor in this stuff.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so, nerve-wracking elevator pitches. Let's do this. I actually wrote a little bit of notes about the company that I worked for over the summer, Northrop Grumman. And so I'm going to act as if Frida was interviewing me for like a full-time role, because that is what I'm seeking. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, and feel free to interact in the chat still. Oh, actually, we have a hand raised. Did somebody want to say anything or like add anything before I
start?
Yeah. I saw a hand raised, but I wasn't sure if it was an accident. So yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to it later.
Okay, we'll get to your questions. We'll have plenty of time. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, hi, Frida. I am Jan Rose Sampson, and I'm a UT Dallas senior studying computer science. I'm interested in Northrop Grumman because I want to go into defense and cybersecurity, and just like the company, I strongly value innovation. I'm experienced in software engineering, as I worked for the past 3 years in various internships, and I'm an active student leader as well. I serve as the community outreach chair for the Society of Women Engineers, and I'm the current logistics chair for women in cybersecurity. I believe my experiences would make me a great asset to Northrop Grumman, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you. Thank you.
All right, Jan Rose, that was great. So like we said before, if you want to mention like what she said, what parts did she take in, what was she good at, maybe what she can improve. Someone said short and sweet. I liked it. There you go. All right. One thing I want to mention is, so since she actually gave it was geared towards a company, geared towards a company, she went like a little bit specific on like its work culture, what they actually work on, and then she said it aligned with her what she wanted to do in the career field, in the future. So that is a perfect example of putting in your company research within your pitch. Like we said, you don't want to go in you don't want to go this blindly in a way. You want to show that the company that you are serious about what they are offering, and you want to convince them that they should take you. That's how you want to kind of do it. That's kind of like how the pitch works, right? So you give them every single reason why you would be a great fit within their company, especially their culture.
So I think along with what we did right, y'all can feel free to say what we can improve on. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and roast myself, because it's important to be humble, but also to learn from your mistakes, right? So I think what Frida did really well was that she put specific, tangible examples. Like when she talked about that project, I was like, ooh, she knows her stuff. She knows what a tech stack is. She knows like those terms. She can throw out those buzzwords. And those are the things that people look at on resumes. For me, I was kind of short and sweet and brief. And, there are pros and cons to that. Maybe you're like tired like I am and you just kind of like give a big overview. But of course, like, while an interview happens or while you talk more and more, oh yeah, I'll go to the previous slide, but like you're going to have, oh, that's the wrong slide. What's it called? You're going to have more specifics. So it is good to go into specifics. It just depends. But yeah, so someone asked, can this also be for the tell me about yourself question? And that is exactly it. So not only is it like for random instances where you're in an elevator with someone, it's also for the tell me about yourself question, because you are pitching yourself in a job interview. You're putting your best foot forward. You have your story down. You have these facts about yourself, and that's super important, right? So that's just stuff to keep in mind. If I were to do an actual, like another elevator pitch, or maybe I was talking to another company that I knew more about, I would definitely go into more specifics. Maybe with TI, I would say like, oh, I'm super interested in like hardware. I don't know, something about TI. I don't know, something like that, but just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and then somebody earlier mentioned that like they found that sometimes talking about the degree program at UTD and why they chose UTD, and you said like yours is computer engineering, super cool by the way, really helps them gauge how much you know specifically in the internship. That is absolutely true. So especially if let's say you don't have project experience, I sort of do, so I was able to tie that in. But let's say you don't, but maybe you should explain just some tips and examples and advice actually, because again, your elevator pitch is customized by you. So if you want to go into like why you chose your engineering degree, what you hope to get out of it, seeing like that, that's what they see, like kind of like passion passion and motivation. They're like, oh, this person's like not quite there yet, but like they are willing to work for it. And that's one good thing about customizing your pitch for that.
So Lisa said, I'm so glad you didn't say that you're passionate about calculators. And I have to say, there's nothing wrong with being passionate about calculators. However, that would have been really funny if I said that. But also, I mean, if you happen to be passionate about calculators, just find a way to tie it into your conversation, you know? Oh yeah, so Jessna asks, should it be like the highlights of your resume? I'd say definitely, because again, right, so this is actually a really good point. Thank you for that. So when you meet someone, especially at an intern fair, career fair, in my experience, you actually hand them your resume and they're like, okay, tell me more about yourself, or tell me a bit about yourself, just like someone else was saying. And while you're talking, they'll actually look at it. And it's not to be rude, it's because they're looking to see if it matches up, not because of like flaws, but more like, oh, what can I see? Like, what are the bullet points? What are those action words? What do they specifically do? Because of course, in 30 to 60 seconds, however long it takes, they're not going to get every single detail. So I think it's a great idea to have the highlights of a resume and make sure that, you know, they kind of match up. And also, it's another thing, like customizing your pitch as well as your resume for a company. It's harder when you're like, when you have like bulk resumes and you're giving them out at a career fair. But, you know, if in the case that you're interviewing, it's nice to have like an individualized resume tailored to that position. Okay, I see a few comments in the chat. I love it.
I love it. So it says, I used to think talking about projects was an important part of elevator pitches. If someone will look at your resume anyway, should we focus on projects? So I would say that's also kind of up to you. I tied into the project. It's because I tied in the project for my elevator pitch because it was a personal project. It wasn't a class project. And I was able to like kind of like what January said about like buzzwords. So I said like React, tech stack, I think they like React Native, excuse me, Node.js and everything. So those are slight like buzzwords right there. So since there's like a lot of buzzwords, I kind of fit the project in within it. But at the same time, I didn't overly talk about my projects. I do have a lot more than one, but I only mentioned one because I wanted to show like, hey, I am motivated enough that I do it outside of class, but I also have other things like leadership skills and like my other interests and everything to show more about your personality. So let's say that your project isn't like your strongest suit, like you only have your class projects. That's totally all right. You can always mention about like what you're working on, what you've learned. Also maybe do like a little bit less on like what your skills and more tying into like why you want to work on that company. It's really a give and take regarding your pitch, I believe. Pitch perfect pick. Gotcha.
Yeah, just remember like your elevator pitch is yours and it varies, you know, and people take different, like, I guess people have different priorities for different things. So some people value products more, some people value experience more. It really just depends. As a rule of thumb, you know, of course, work experience, you should probably say first and like mention that, and then projects, and then maybe like extracurriculars and such. But it depends. Maybe you know that the recruiter is like actually an active member of SWE in the professional world, and you're just like, hey, like I'm super involved. This is how I've used my skills, etc. It really just depends, but there's a lot of flexibility to it. Like our rules aren't set in stone. They're just to give you some guidelines and really shape out like your introductory elevator pitch. And of course, you can tailor it every single time. Some people change their pitch every time, except for those few quick facts. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes your pitches might be different to like each recruiter you talk to. So like you can tell by when you start talking to the company recruiter, like if they sort of want people with like really good personalities, like really motivated, ready to do projects, maybe you want to like emphasize more on your skills. And then there's company recruiters you can sort of tell where like they want people who's like fit with their culture and like their company culture. So maybe talk about like how you can fit in it and like what leadership skills that you can bring into it. That's sometimes one good thing. Sometimes they talk about like their new technologies, and if you done your research correctly, you can mention about the new technologies and what you're excited for about that company. It's really it's just like such a plethora of things that you can add in your elevator pitch, but the most important part is to keep it like sweet and concise as well. So that 30 to 60 second is really like kind of like that constraint for elevator pitches. Hopefully that makes sense.
So I know we've gone back and forth a lot, and I've loved all these questions. Oh yeah, and so someone asked, if you're a freshman, should you say you're a freshman? So definitely keep in mind that, well, yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with saying your year and, you know, being honest, and there's nothing wrong with being a freshman. Like actually a lot of companies are looking for that. For the mechanical firm I worked at, actually, they were looking for freshmen because they wanted them to stay in the company for years, rather than have someone just like one semester, 1 year and go. Like they're looking to invest in someone. And, you know, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Amazon, they actually have like earlier, I think, college year programs like Google Step, like Facebook University, like there's an Amazon one that Caitlin knows the name of that I can't remember. There's stuff for freshmen and sophomores,
Yes.
and as well as internships for freshmen and sophomores as well. So don't discount yourself, and also just be honest, because if TI, for example, is strong and looking for juniors and seniors, you shouldn't say you're a junior or a senior. So
Yeah. Definitely don't like lie, for example, but like I think it's super impressive when like freshmen are already going out there and talking to
Yeah.
company recruiters, and they'll probably feel the same way. They'll literally LMA, I never lied. Yeah. So you don't try to like change yourself to fit into this company recruiters, like whatever they're saying. Just like show them who you are, and they'll just be impressed by it anyway. So it's like, oh, this freshman decided to come up to me, and even though it said junior, senior, they decided to come up to me and connect with me or like learn more about the company. That's great. I like this person. It's something more for connections and networking.
Yeah, and keep in mind that every time you do this, it gets easier.
Yeah.
You know, of course, you're going to be nervous. Like the nerves don't necessarily ever go away, depending on like your personality. But even as a freshman, I went just because I really wanted that experience and just to get used to talking to people. And actually, a word of advice, and similar to what Cindy said about like seeing how reactors react to students, and what reactors, how recruiters react to students before they talk, that they talk to before her. Like also keeping in mind that like, okay, so let's say you really want to go for like Apple at the Suite conference or something. Maybe don't talk to them first. Maybe like talk and warm up to other companies and introduce yourself first. And then when you have like, we've got it, when the nerves and jitters are out, you kind of like go in that, you're in a better mindset and you're more like set in what you're going to say when you talk to them. So, you know, it's fine if you're not interested in a company. Like the worst that can happen is they reject you or they say, apply online. And it's like, okay, well, what do you do? So then just move on with your life and apply to other companies and just, you know, hope that you get one yes, because that's all it takes. So
that is okay. That's really good advice. And I actually kind of endorse that. The whole like, if you have like top pick companies at like an intern fair or like a Suite conference, maybe don't go to them first. Work out those nerves, talk to like the smaller companies, talk to companies that you didn't think of before, work out those nerves and like get comfortable with your elevator pitch, find that perfect form, and then like talk to the companies. I mean, don't be too late about it also, but then talk to the companies that you really want to talk to, because then like you'll be like, got it, you'll be clear, you'll like be comfortable, you'll be like, hey, let's link up and everything.
So we've talked a lot about our experiences and about elevator pitches, and I still love seeing the comments, so feel free, like, you know, don't stop the questions now. But if anybody actually wants to volunteer to do their elevator pitch, this is like, I know that's nerve-wracking, but that's how you got to do it. So we're happy to do it with you. Also, you can type it in the chat and we can talk about it if you'd like, or if you have more questions on your specific elevator pitch or you want to talk about your experiences, feel free. But I think now it's a good time for y'all to go get some practice. So if you want to take a few to like write yours down or think about it, or maybe you just want to get on camera and just show off your elevator pitch, feel absolutely free.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
So I was unable to type in the chat, but I had a question.
Yeah.
My question was, I had two questions. It was, should we include an objective statement on our resumes?
Yeah, so this varies from company to company, and I hate that answer because it doesn't give you a straight answer, but that is the truth. So for example, for the website I showed you, which I'll link after the meeting, it is the Microsoft recommended resume, and it is a technical resume, and they do not have objective statements. I have heard from my manager at Northrop Grumman that he likes it just because he's old school, but he's also like a 60-year-old man who just likes objective statements. But for most companies, it just kind of takes up space, and they already know what you want. So it kind of depends on the context. Maybe they want it, maybe you know that the recruiter prefers it, but in general, like for technical resumes, no. However, I will admit that in professional communications, they do tell you to put an objective statement. So you're going to get different answers no matter who you talk to, but I'm going to give you like my honest advice and my experience, like it's not necessary. So
yeah, I want to like add on to that. If you do need to put an objective statement, make sure it's just like one sentence, and usually it's like actively looking for something internship. It's really just like super clear, straight through, like what are you like looking for, sort of thing. I wouldn't recommend like a paragraph, just like a sentence for an objective if you really need to put it on your resume.
Okay, and if we have non-technical work experience, is it smart to include that, and non-technical projects, or should it only be technical related projects and experience?
That's another good question. Okay,
Yeah.
so do you want to go? You can go first, Frida.
Oh yeah, sure. So let's say that like all your work experience so far is non-technical. I think it's good idea to mention like one or two. I just stick with one but I only had one job in my life. But sorry. So I think it's okay to put like a non-technical experience on your resume, like first starting out, because it'll see like, oh, this person has work experience. Like, let's see, like, did they work in a team? Did they work with like different types of people and everything? Like, and I think so. I believe it's a good idea to put non-technical experience. And when you start getting technical experience, like internships, co-ops, I would start kind of like phasing the non-technical experiences out of your resume and putting those technical experiences first. And then for non-technical skills, so I would, if you really, really want to, or you want to like fill up that space that I mentioned before, I would definitely put that like in the bottom near like your resume. So like the way you would organize it is like more technical, more skills on the top, and then like less technical related at the bottom if necessary. But I'm not really endorsing the whole like putting non-technical skills, but like leadership skills and like soft skills, like that's okay, but it's not super recommended since everyone like the soft skills. Andrew,
Yeah, sorry. If I can jump in real quick.
Yeah.
I will say that this also varies company to company because I remember, I don't know if CJ can see the chat, so that's why I wanted to say it, but I remember my very first intern fair, I asked JCPenney the same question, and they loved retail experience. So when I was applying to them, I did put in that I worked like in a clothing store for a year, you know, all that. But then I went to this company called Ethos that didn't care at all for retail, and they just wanted to see projects, they wanted to see initiative and technical skills. So for that, I more filled up my resume with personal projects. So do your research, like it depends on the type of company as well. And honestly, you can just ask a recruiter on LinkedIn. Whoever's going to be reading your resume will know best what to put on it. So always do that.
Because I have some projects that I've done, but they're not like, some of them aren't technical. And so I was wondering if I should put those on there.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think to last but not least, like add on to that. So last year at the SWE conference, actually, I talked to, I'll just say it, Toyota, and the guy that I interviewed with specifically, he was actually like, okay, but what actual work experience have you had? Like, what non-technical stuff have you had? He specifically asked for it because he was like, I really value that in a person. I think it shows grit. And sometimes you'll come across people like that, and that's really fine. It's just that my resume didn't have any of like my retail experience or my like whatever experience. And now I'm like, okay, maybe I will talk about it and put it on because it shows like a lot of grit. It shows, you know, your character. It also shows like soft skills because you had to talk to people during those roles, right? So no matter what, like if you have experience, just like Frida was saying, you know, talk about it. Especially at least if you don't have any technical experience, but also like add in that like maybe your interests as well as your projects, even if they're not technical, because it gives you something to talk about. It gives you something to be passionate about, and it, you know, you can convey that you can talk about things like well, and you know your experience better than anybody else. And there has been cases where people don't have any technical experience and they get hired into Microsoft just because they were so well spoken and they had such like great interest and like, you know, way of thinking. So.
That elevator pitch. There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do see hand raised. I think, sorry, Frida.
No, you're good. I was saying like somebody asked a question in the chat.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry if my audio is kind of weird. I hope it works. But for an elevator pitch, would it be weird to like have, since I have like no really technical experience yet, or even like projects that I've worked on yet, because I just started, but would it be weird to talk about like issues, I guess, or like things that you're passionate about? Like if you're passionate about certain like women's rights or technological access or things like that, like would it be weird to have that in an elevator pitch just to kind of fill up that space?
That's a very good question. Like I've actually never thought about this, but I think that's a really good question. So I'm just gonna say, this goes along with company research. As much as I wish that you could say this stuff all the time, unfortunately, like some companies are less about like, I guess, public issues, and they're like more reserved or conservative, you know.
Mhm.
But I think generally, like, if you're passionate about things and you have experience in them, yes. But I think if you just talk about the issues themselves, that's kind of a different conversation that maybe wouldn't belong in an elevator pitch. But
Mhm.
I think it does vary from company culture to company culture. I know certain companies have made statements. I know certain companies are heavily affected by like current issues, and maybe then it's nice to bring up. But it really just depends on the context. And unfortunately, this is a question again that varies like so much. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, it really
And
goes back to company research. Sorry. Go ahead.
okay, and I had one more question.
Mhm.
So with that, like the elevator speech, would it be okay to put like I'm looking for a company that maybe like values their morals and has good ethics, or would that just be something that's unnecessary?
Ooh, if the company is known to have good morals and ethics, then
It's good.
definitely plug it, because that means that, you know, maybe say something like our goals really align, or I have, you know, I'm interested in, let's say, sustainable engineering, and your company has that, you know, like that's super important to mention.
Mhm.
Like, I think if it doesn't really go along with the company, if you say that, they're just gonna say like, oh, she hasn't done her research, or
Mhm.
oh, like that has nothing to do with us, like, oh.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's a call out and it's confident and I like it, but you know, at the end of the day, if you're looking to get hired with a certain company, you have to know that company culture and what they're looking for. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Good questions.
Wait, I'd like to just jump in there for a sec because that's a really good question. Like when I'm talking to companies too, like I usually like to mention that I'm a strong advocate for women in tech.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, honestly, if that puts them off, I probably wouldn't want to work there anyway because like that's
Yeah.
a big indicator of like poor culture. So I wouldn't want to work there anyway. So I think it's valid to make yourself clear and say that, hey, this is something I really value and I hope that you do too.
That's
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because it is like I guess like a two-way relationship. Like, yes, you want to work at a company, but they should also be able to work with you. And like, if they don't align with like the goals that you have in mind, especially like the things that you believe in, if they don't really like care for that or mind for that, you shouldn't try to push yourself to go into that company or try to like fit in the mold of that company. Absolutely. Okay. Wow, I love this conversation that's going. I think this is
I know. This is good stuff.
very engaging, but very like needed.
Yeah.
Let me see if I missed anything else. Oh. Okay, so someone said, never ask a company what types of jobs do you have, no matter how good your resume pitch is. If the next thing out of your mouth is, are you guys hiring? You
Yeah.
immediately go to the bottom of the pile. It's worked with recruiting. It comes off as leads. Yeah, okay. No, absolutely good point. You definitely don't want to seem like you don't know what you're talking about, or like, so like, what do you guys actually do? Like, don't do
Oh my
that.
gosh. Okay, so good rule of thumb, and this
Mhm.
goes along with the whole research point, like research the company. If you go and say, so tell me about the company, or like tell me what y'all do, it's like, what? Like, these are things that you could easily spend a minute like looking at their company, like their about, their vision, their mission, and just you're good. And if you use that, then you're gonna already be above the other applicants that have asked those questions of like, you hiring? Or like, what positions do you have open? Or, you know, simple Googleable questions. Like,
Yeah.
of course, you know, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. That's actually highly suggested and recommended because it shows that you're interested and it shows that you're engaged and you have, you know, things to follow up on and actually talk about. And that's what makes you memorable. However, you don't want to be known as the person that didn't do their research or isn't detail oriented, especially if you're going to say that you are in your elevator pitch. It's just kind of ironic. So that's an excellent point.
Anything that you can kind of like look up online, you definitely don't want to ask that questions to. So you don't want to be like, what type of internships do they have? You should already kind of know what internships you're looking for. But at the same time, you can still ask about their internship. So be like, oh, I searched online that you guys have a software engineering internship. I kind of want to ask what type of internship projects you guys work on. Like, how many people, I was like, what have you guys developed within your internship program? Stuff like that is okay because you're genuinely interested and asking about their internships or co-op program, excuse me.
Yes, there's a follow-up to that, and it's like, is it okay to say that at an intern fair just to start a conversation maybe? I have done this. I'm not going to say that like oh, you can never do it, and like, oh, if you do it, you're banned or something. No, I think, if it comes down to it, it's not like a sin to say it, but I think you still, especially like with virtual career fairs, you're still going to see the about actually on the website, or I attended the Women in Cybersecurity, or not the Women in Cybersecurity, it was a different cybersecurity virtual career fair. When you like walk into the room online and you click on different companies, it'll say they're about. So I think just use that as much as you can to your advantage, just because it's right there before you even have an option to talk to them. So there's a lot of context that, has to be had, but it's not the worst thing to say it. But I think if you could go in saying, hey, I'm interested in this specific thing, that looks a lot better. So.
Yeah, I would just say, I read a little bit about your company, but I just want to understand more about your work culture or something. Start off with something like you maybe know a little bit, and then just like ask for more information. I think like that's that's like a trick I kind of use for asking companies that I haven't really heard about, or very kind of like some of them are like smaller startups. So yeah. All right, these are some great questions. Oh my goodness, I'm so glad. I'm really happy.
Yeah. So I do see a lot of questions, but not a lot of elevator pitches, but which is totally fine. If anybody wants to volunteer, say something now, maybe raise your hand or just get on camera or put it in the chat. Otherwise, I think we'll move on in a few minutes, but we can still have questions and everything, and we'll have time for questions at the end as well.
Yeah. Anybody wants to do an elevator pitch?
Or if you've written one, feel free to type it out, It's nice to have inspiration or see what other people do differently. I want to play like elevator music or something. I feel like that'd be funny.
Oh, that would have been so perfect. Oh, I did not think of that.
That's okay. Okay, do you think we should move on to the next slides?
Yeah, sure. We can kind of wrap up like a little bit, just to reiterate, sorry, I'm all about like recapping and everything. Like we said again, we gave the Prepping That Pitch guidelines, but honestly, it is up to you how you customize it. Like I said before, sometimes your pitch will change within the same day. I remember that I talked to Toyota Connected, and they mentioned about like their new robotics technology and everything, and like they do make software, but it's really for like how they fit within the cars technology. So I actually like switched up my pitch like right as I was talking about it. I dropped my project idea and I mentioned that I was in robotics in high school and how that got me into computer science and how like I want to do programming, and like I really think like automation and software for hardware is like super interesting to me. So I switched it up and it worked out really great. I think like I got some really good feedback and response from the recruiter. So it's like we said before, it is kind of like, even though it's your elevator pitch and it's like it's kind of like prepared and like kind of saying everything at once, it is also part of the conversation you make with that recruiter. Right.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about what comes next. So you have your resume in their hand, you've had your elevator pitch, you talked about yourself, you presented your best self, living your best life. So what do you do after that? How do you stay connected? So to get to the next stage, a lot of it is the contact information, obviously. How can they reach you if they don't know your name or your email? So of course, at the top of your resume, you're going to have your email, your name, not your address, but maybe your zip code. I mean, not that that really matters. Your LinkedIn, maybe your GitHub. Some people have business cards. I don't really see that a lot in CS majors, at least, but the reps might have business cards. So it's nice to get one of those from them, because then you'll have their name and their email, and that just is a good sign. And you can follow up with them after the career fair and say like, hey, we met, we talked about this. I'm interested in these roles, just letting you know. And to go along with that, connecting on LinkedIn and or Handshake is nice, because then you can also follow up with them on that network. They can see your accomplishments and your updates to LinkedIn, etc. They can see when you graduate, and maybe then they'd be more inclined to hire you when you're more near graduation. And also just apply. Like the earlier the better. Even if you don't think you're qualified, even if you think that you're just a freshman, just apply, because you never know. And again, it only takes one yes. Rejection is overrated. So also after you apply, let the recruiter know, because sometimes they can help move you along the application process. And if they really like you, they'll just tell like their the hiring manager like, hey, like this person's great, just phone interview them. And that's happened a few times to people, so keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the first steps is actually going to the intern fair or the conference. So I mentioned this because this Friday is actually the ECS intern fair. definitely go. If you're a freshman, go. If you're not a freshman, go anyway. If you're not even part of the school, go anyway. Go to the intern fair. Go to the intern fair. Really promoting the intern fair here. But yeah, no. It's first of all great to get out there, get the experience of like how to do the elevator pitch, or like just how to talk to company recruiters in general. Sometimes they are totally open of you like asking questions about like how can I like stay connected, how can I connect with the recruiter, how does this process work and everything. They're totally they love answering those types of questions, kind of like their job, right? And at the same time, you can connect with them, so like they can keep you in mind even for next year. I've heard of some stories like that happened. How do I sign up for the intern fair? Very good question. I forgot. Handshake, right? It's through Handshake.
Yeah, so you go on Handshake. I think Sindhu might know a lot about this.
Yes.
And then I think there should be like an events tab or something. I have to look at it. But yeah, so go to Handshake. I think it's joinhandshake.utdallas.com or something.
Yeah.
And then go to the events page, and then, or maybe even look up the career fair or intern
Just
fair,
yes.
and it should be there. But yeah, I think this is Sindhu's domain.
Yeah, Sindhu, you got this, girl. Yeah, and the intern fair, definitely join, or sorry, definitely go. And then also we have, this is the first actual like workshop for our professional development series. There's one happening actually tomorrow, helping you with your LinkedIn, branding yourself, and actually connecting with the recruiter. So please go there for a lot more information on like, you know, how to stay connected. Okay, yeah. So that is actually pretty much, actually, did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. I think we're good.
Awesome. Well, that is the end of our wonderful Pitch Yourself 101 workshop. We'll stay a little bit to answer any of your questions. Oh, somebody actually sent their elevator pitch. I love this.
Oh, okay, awesome. But yeah, we're gonna stick around to answer some questions. But I think as for material with the slides, we're basically done. But hang around, maybe get on the chat with us, and just ask any questions or send your elevator pitch. Feel free to just send it during this meeting. We'll stick around, but thanks for coming, and also make sure to come to the rest of the professional development workshop series. We have a lot of amazing stuff in store, just like Afrida was saying. And we have the LinkedIn workshop. Is that next? I don't know,
Yeah,
but that's
that is next.
That's how you stay connected. So.
All right, we have someone who raised their hands too.